Runny noses, diarrhea, fever, and infection. Let's face it, microorganisms have a bad rep. They can make us sick and cause disease. However, there are some that help us stay healthy. I can guarantee that everyone in this class has been affected by microorganisms at one time or another. Whether your symptoms were caused by bacteria or virus, the end result was getting sick. Some microorganisms live in symbiosis with their host. Like Robin Marantz Henig says in her January 2020 National Geographic article, The Microbiome Menagerie, trillions of microbes call our body home. Now we're learning they're crucial for our health. Being a scientist at the Sierra Hospital Laboratory has given me valuable insight into microorganisms and what they do. In the microbiology department, I read slides to classify bacteria, and I run tests on C. diff, strep, and flu to help diagnose patients. Now I'd like to give you 3 examples of microorganisms being used medically. First, there is a procedure, FMT, or fecal microbiota transplantation, performed because antibiotics and other factors disrupt the normal balance of colonic flora and produce colonization resistance, allowing pathogenic C. difficile strains to grow, states Johann S. Bakken and others in their article, Treating Clostridium difficile Infection with Fecal Microbiota Transplantation. Also, viruses and bacteria are being genetically engineered to target cancer cells, according to Shannon Weeman in her report, Harnessing the Power of Microbes as Therapeutics, Bugs as Drugs. Lastly, microorganisms have been used in the pharmaceutical industry to produce antibiotics. Let's look at the first example to discuss FMT and why it's done. FMT is performed on persons with recurring C. diff infection or CDI to balance their intestinal flora. Microbiota are the microorganisms that inhabit a certain area of the body. If the microbiota in a person's gut is disrupted, C. diff and its deadly toxins can multiply until the host is sick. CDI causes symptoms because of its toxicity and virulence. The infected can have loose, watery stools 10 to 15 times a day, causing dehydration. Other symptoms include severe cramping and pain. The stools of an infected person may contain blood and pus, and the patient will also be feverish and nauseated. CDI is mostly a hospital-acquired infection. However, it can affect certain groups of people. Elderly and elderly patients on antibiotics are especially susceptible to CDI, and persons with impaired immune systems like cancer patients. According to Johann S. Bakken and others, in 2010, the yearly incidence of CDI was estimated at 500,000, with mortality at 15 to 20,000. 2 weeks after infusion of donor fecal suspension into the patient, the bacterial composition of her feces changed to closely resemble that of the donor, states Bakken and others. Out of 200 cases reported, 96% success rate. This is a picture of the feces with their This is an image taken with a scanning electron microscope by Martin Ogerle in the National Geographic January 2020 magazine. Now let's look at the second example. Microbes can be used to treat cancer and stimulate the body's immune response. Bacteriophages are viruses that infect bacterial cells, and they can be genetically altered to target cancer cells. Depending on the bacteria, anti-tumor effects will vary, but they usually share 2 attributes. The bacteriophage directly affect tumor cells with their cytotoxicity, and they also hinder the tumor from getting blood flow, which supplies oxygen and nutrients for survival. Here's a picture of a bacteriophage. You've got the DNA here. The virus grabs onto the bacteria and injects this DNA right through its sheath into the bacteria. Unlike chemotherapy, therapeutic bacteria are developed specifically to target tumors, states Shannon Weeman. Chemotherapy is toxic to both tumor cells and healthy tissues, causing side effects that may be life-threatening. Chemotherapy via the bloodstream only reaches the outer ring of a tumor, while bacteria and viruses can penetrate the tumor. This type of cancer treatment works better than chemotherapy and is safer. Now let's look at the third example. Antibiotics are natural substances produced by certain microbes and used to treat infectious disease. It was in 1929 when Alexander Fleming discovered a powerful bactericide called penicillin. Penicillin was used to treat bacteria that cause gonorrhea, meningitis, and diphtheria. By the end of 1943, the production of penicillin was the second highest priority at the War Department. Only the development of the atomic bomb was considered more important, according to I. Sherman in his book, Drugs That Changed the World. Fleming was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1945 for the discovery of penicillin and its curative effect in various infectious diseases. Penicillin and other antimicrobials have low toxicity in humans, making them ideal for treating bacterial infections. Penicillin is made from the mold penicillin, so it is easily produced. One of the drawbacks of antibiotics is they are only good for a few years before the bacteria become resistant. The incidence of multi-drug resistant bacteria or superbugs have been increasing worldwide, according to P.F. Ettit in the book Antibiotic Resistance. MRSA or methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus has been a serious threat to public health since the 1960s when the first strains emerged. Most antibiotics work by inhibiting cell wall synthesis, protein synthesis, or nucleic acid synthesis, causing the cell's death. Today we discussed three-way microorganisms can be beneficial. First we learned about FMT and that it can help patients with C. difficile. Next we spoke about bacteria and viruses and how they can target tumors and cancer. Lastly, we dove into the past to learn about penicillin and how it came about, and touched on a little resistance to antibiotics. My purpose in giving this speech was to change your mind about bad microorganisms by seeing the good things they can do for us. We now know poop isn't all gross, it can help people too, and targeting cancer cells with microorganisms is revolutionary and safer. Also, don't forget to take all your antibiotics when they're prescribed to you. We don't want any more superbugs. Thanks.